Moving on to consideration of creation of Kearns Community Center Advisory Committee and authorization for a letter of intent. Mr. Ward.
Thank you. As you heard, there is a proposal for utilizing the decommissioned Kearns School as a community center by an outside entity referred to for today's purposes as the Kearns Steering Committee. There's two suggested motions I have for you tonight. One is the creation of a community center advisory committee, which I would like to be charged with investigating the nature of the programs that the community center would provide and the terms of a lease between it and the town. My thought being perhaps terms of the years or any other conditions. There is a proposed list of candidates that were intentionally drawn from representative groups that could interact with the community center or could be have particular insight as to the needs and programs already offered in town. Just to mention the list, representing the Board of Selectmen, Ms. King, the Commission of Aging, Donna Snyder, the Development Commission, Mr. Schweiger, the Library Board, Matthew Hammer, Parks and Recreation, Susan Yuka, and the Citizen Representative, Ms. Diane Hernsdorf. I recommend all these candidates for your consideration. They will agree to serve if that's the choice of the Board of Selectmen. Any of that is subject to your approval, including elements of the charge.
Well, why don't we break this up into two motions? So in order for discussion, I'd like to have a motion to form the creation of Kearns Community Center Advisory Committee.
I move that the board create a Kearns Community Advisory Center with a charge of
The charges within the
the charges
in the agreement.
the agreements,
And membership.
and the membership is outlined by Town Manager Ward.
Is there a second to form the committee?
I'll second.
Okay, so let's have a discussion. Any members of the board want to discuss? Jim?
I just one thought in particular on the composition was that I think it would behoove us to consider a representative from the Board of Finance. I don't know if that was under consideration, but having that expertise look at it and crafting and providing input into understanding the proposal and crafting input into the different financial arrangements it could enter into.
I have no objection to that.
Anyone have an
I agree with that. That was going to be my suggestion.
Okay, so we'll add a member. We'll need a motion to have it. Can you amend your?
I will amend my motion to add a Board of Finance representative to the list that Town Manager Ward had proposed.
And you second that motion?
I second that.
All right, any further discussion on that? Or anything? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. Now moving to authorization for letter of intent. Mr. Ward, do you have anything?
Yes, before you in the agenda tonight was a proposed letter of intent. This was drafted by administration with the assistance of the town attorney. This is a non-binding agreement. Its essential role is an expression of good faith, a signal that this board is contemplating the proposed use of Kearns School as a community center. It does not empower the steering committee with any authority to enter on the property, utilize it. There's Still has to be approval by planning and zoning and the Board of Selectmen. There still has to be terms of a lease decided on. Again, this is an expression of good faith. The purpose essentially is to enable the committee and its subsequent versions to engage in fundraising. It's a little bit of the chicken versus the egg. People don't want to donate money until they know the town is at least seriously considering something. This is a signal to would-be donors that this is not just speculation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on it. One question that came to mind, there's not an expiration date on it. I think it could be amended to add one. I would recommend 180 days.
60 days in there.
That's to commence the lease.
Yeah.
That's the commence lease.
As you may recall from the presentation earlier, there is an aggressive timetable contemplated, namely fundraising with the goal of getting to their goal of either 2.8 at a minimum of 1.5 million prior to July 1st. And I think the key component in this is going to be whether or not there isn't, if the group is successful in obtaining money from the state. Without that, I don't think this has as high of a likelihood of success as we'd like. So I think those will be clear within the next 6 months. So again, this is a mechanism to assist them with their fundraising, because I would not recommend to you to enter into any binding agreement with them until we know they have enough money to do this. They're not going to be given permission to do anything with the building until I know they have enough money to build it as they want and to have assurances that this will be a successful endeavor and not one that collapses in 18 months.
Shouldn't another condition in here be also the formation of a 501c3? You know, this is...
Let me get a motion
I'm sorry.
first and then do discussion, just to make sure we're following it. So I'll look for a motion to authorize the town manager to execute a letter of intent.
I move to authorize the town manager to execute a letter of intent as presented with the Kearns Steering Committee.
Is there a second? I'll second. Further discussion. Sally?
Again, the question on the entity. In other words, we have the agreement is with the Kearns Community Center Steering Committee, so not a really formal organization. I would think that we would want to have another condition in here that the steering committee moves from, gets its 501c3 designation, and, you know, I mean, because that's a lot of the...
Yeah, I have no objection to that. I think certainly before any more formal agreement is executed, they have to be constituted as some type of corporate entity.
A legal entity,
A legal
501c3 designation, right.
See, the only concern I have with
ask the
that,
question.
and I'm not as experienced as some of the others we've heard from tonight, and the time frame necessary in order to become a 501c3. I mean, just offhandedly, I've heard anything from 6 months to 18 months.
I've done it twice, so, yeah.
Well, let's ask the steering committee, is there any?
No, there's nobody here.
Yeah, they're all.
Are there any?
Is there okay, is there progress?
You can expedite it and have it within 3 months.
Okay. Are you working
We've
toward that?
started, yeah.
You have, okay. All right, that's good. Thank you. Are you set?
Selectman King, the only thing I'd provide a little flexibility for it to be a duly constituted legal entity. They may find in going through 501c3 that there's an interim step or there's another form that might serve them better. So as long as it's a legally constituted entity to enter a lease agreement in, the form or fashion of it is less material to me.
Well, only
prescribe it to be
simply that the
501c3.
501c3 is the vehicle by which they
But
get the donation.
If they switched and formed a B Corp, fine too. If they-
That's different, that's totally different.
I
That's a-
understand.
That's a legal entity, and the 501c3 is a designation by the IRS. so-
Understood.
Do they need this in the letter of intent to move forward? I mean, this is for them to move forward, to start fundraising, to see if it's a...
My legal brain is just going.
No, I know. I'm
overdrive
just saying,
because it's
though,
like-
is that the intent of the letter of intent? That makes sense. You know what I mean?
I don't think they need it. I think it would be preferable to have this reflect the entity that's actually going to be doing the fundraising and doing the work.
Okay.
Whether it's a precursor to a final designation or not. It would make the letter stronger. I mean, I don't think there's a practical problem. I don't think it's that, you know, if this group suddenly breaks apart next month, then yes, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not going to proceed with any of this then if the
Right.
group's splintered in any regard. So I would certainly suggest before any further documents are signed, a legally recognized entity is formed.
Okay.
And certainly I would consult with the town attorney as to whether or not we have any concerns as to what entities we can execute an agreement with or not.
Okay.
Whatever agreement we sign, I want it to be the entity that's running the place.
Right.
You know, I don't want any questions of, you know, Corporation B isn't responsible for what Corporation A agreed to. So,
Is that something?
Yeah,
Sally,
no,
would you
I
like to-
only talk about the 501c3 because in order to do what they need to do, they have to have that status. So if there's some kind of...
So should we add wording to
I
put
don't
it?
know. I don't know that they necessarily...
Timeframe? Or what do you suggest?
I think the point is who's signing this, right? In other words, what entity is signing on their behalf?
Well, there is no entity now, so they're
Right.
signing in
As
their names.
individuals?
But I think that one of the action numbers, I mean, we have a whole bunch of action numbers here. So one of those action numbers is that there's a formal corporation, there's a formal entity that we end up dealing with, and that entity secures 501c3 status. And that is important because they came to the fundraising they want to
Right.
do unless they have that status, so.
Is there some wording you'd like to add so we can amend our, well,
I know.
you know,
Scott, do we need to approve the specific wording in here or provide, amend the motion?
well,
to
actually,
provide the
we could
intent?
provide guidance to
Because
the town manager.
we're, right, the motion was to have the town manager enter into this.
That's true, and then the town manager can advise with the town attorney to meet the objectives of your question.
Yeah.
the proposed letter of intent does refer to the lessee as Kearns Community Center with execution lines for the two co-presenters. Now, lessee can be Kearns Community Center, well,
What number
But to Jim's
Number
point,
3.
why don't we have you, to meet Sally's
yeah.
need, work with the town attorney to draft a number 12 or whatever, number 12 to Kearns Community Center needs to obtain 501c3 status
Corporate.
prior to
Both of the others, both of the...
execution of whatever document comes next or whatever. I mean, this is a non-binding letter of intent, right? So
Okay, I mean,
it
I
doesn't
can
mean-
add that, but I don't think,
Right.
that was not going to happen anyways.
Okay.
Got it.
There may be some tweaking on number 3, Kearns Community Center,
Right.
because they're not going to be holding the actual lessee.
Okay.
That's a TBD.
Trying to think, Kearns Community Center, maybe change it to successor entity to Kearns Community Center.
That's fine.
Well,
Are you okay with that, Sally? At this point, in terms of the letter?
Yeah, as long as we get the intent of that in there.
Okay. Ed?
No, I agree with what Sally's saying. And then I guess the other thing is, we keep using the word non-binding, but I mean, a lease is to follow, the terms of the lease, whether it's, the price, the term, et cetera, that's all to be negotiated at a future date. And can either party exit this LOI? Because I don't see any exit terms on it. And usually when you make a contract, you kind of plan for an exit.
Conditions to lease.
That doesn't allow us to exit the LOI.
Contingent.
There is not an explicit exit clause on this.
So I think we might want to think about putting that in. For whatever reason, you typically have an exit clause.
A
Yeah,
condition is not an exit clause.
this agreement can be mutually dissolved by either party.
Yep.
Well,
Simple as that.
any agreement can be mutually dissolved by the parties.
Well,
It's when it's not so mutual.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, the whole point here is to allow them to start their fundraising
Right.
process.
Exactly.
So,
Right, but
that's the whole
it's
point of
somewhat
this.
weakened if it can be
That's fine.
removed arbitrarily.
Okay.
but it's not binding anyway.
So, yeah.
No,
it's-
Never land here.
It's a letter of intent.
That's right.
I think perhaps it would be best if I confer with the town attorney and then bring this back at the next meeting. Because I'm not entirely sure I've got the wording in the manner that I'm hearing the board say they want it in. I don't want to do it on the fly.
I seconded the motion. I'm comfortable with this motion being voted on with the preface that you work with the town manager,
The
town attorney,
To come up with the
to
correct.
come up with
Yes, right.
intentions. I don't,
Okay.
I'm not in favor of
agree with that.
tabling this to another meeting, and I think, you know what, folks, this is a letter of intent. It's just that. It would be another delay that I don't think is needed.
I agree with that. We just,
I
will
think
work with
we,
the
so you heard our
Yeah.
comments.
To-
I think you guys just
to-
incorporate them.
Incorporate an exit provision.
Sally's concerned.
and
Yep.
Sally's
Well, yeah.
concern.
Yep. Okay.
So, yeah, I just,
Yeah.
so at this point, you're going to amend your motion to include
Review by the town attorney.
review by the town attorney, correct? Look at that. And I will second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving or authorizing the town manager to execute a letter of intent with the provisions discussed, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you.